Moving on, though, there's a story out of California, David. I mean, we've talked about this before. In fact, there was a case I remember a couple of years ago. One of the stars of the National Geographic Doomsday Preppers show. He basically went in to get treated for back pain at his local doctor's. They took him to be suicidal. He later ended up having his gun seized because he may have self-harmed or whatever the excuse was. Now we're seeing that a similar case in California, David, where they're talking about family members of gun owners ratting them out and potentially leading to gun confiscation. Tell us about that.
Well, yeah, that's a bill that was signed into law by Governor Jerry Brown. It's the first law in the United States that's going to give families who think that a close relative might commit gun violence, it gives the family the ability to petition for a restraining order, essentially have that person's firearms taken away. Now, of course, we don't want to see mentally ill people with firearms, but it all boils down to what is the process here? Is this due processes going on? Is there another agenda? And I would say, Paul, that since virtually all these cases are predicated not by gun ownership, but by the use of SSRIs. Why can't the family petition that they get their SSRIs taken away? I mean, they're not going to do anything to address what we all believe here at InfoWars is the root cause of this, and that is the increased conditions. When you take these SSRIs for psychological conditions, in many cases it exacerbates those conditions, especially if someone comes off of the SSRI. So that's really what they need to address, and the fact that they are not looking at that makes you understand that there's a different agenda here. That's strictly another way to control firearms and to do it without due process.
Okay, we're going to go to some of your calls now. John in Michigan's been holding a while. We'll go to John. You're on the air.
I want to talk about this lady from Gainesville, Georgia. Her name's Ashley Huff. She was only 23. She was arrested for possessing a spoon covered in SpaghettiO residue, tomato sauce. And she spent about 47 days in jail after she couldn't make all these appointments for drug testing and all this, I don't know, these weird appointments they gave her. And her public defender even came out and said, it's a giant mistake, and it ruined her life. And it's sad because they tried to get her to take the plea bargain the whole time, just plead guilty, and we'll let you out, And it's pretty sad. But also, I was looking at, there's been formerly classified documents that have been obtained from the Department of Defense that reveal that colloidal silver has an effect against fighting Ebola. With your immune system, it helps fight the hemorrhagic fever. And apparently they've been trying to block shipments going to Africa. The World Health Organization has recently blocked several shipments.
Yeah, I've read about that story. I don't know if it's confirmed or not, but it definitely seems to be one that keeps cropping up. Referring to the previous story, I mean, David, isn't this emblematic of a banana republic where you commit some petty crime that's mistaken, you get trapped in the penal system, and you can't get out? I mean, that really gets to the heart of it, doesn't it?
It really does. And, the SpaghettiOs is an extreme case of that. But look at the reality that 80% of the people in prison for drug offenses are there for possession of marijuana. We have more people in prison than any other country per population, way more than communist China that we were just talking about. And most of them are there because of marijuana. So, when we look at this prison system, there's a lot of profit that is there for the private prison companies in a lot of different areas, but it's a way for the government to exercise control. There's a lot of ballot initiatives coming up where people would have, in Alaska and other places, there's marijuana that is on the ballot. Are they going to allow medical marijuana? Are they going to decriminalize it? I think it's something that people need to take a very close look at, and we need to question whether or not we want to continue this drug war that's gone on now for 40, 50 years. It started back in the 70s when Richard Nixon declared a war on drugs, and then it went into steroids with Ronald Reagan, where they had mandatory minimums and all other kinds of things that filled up the prisons. It hasn't worked. It hasn't worked. Our experiment with alcohol prohibition didn't work. The only difference is that with alcohol prohibition, they did it legally. They passed a constitutional amendment. They don't even have the constitutionally legal authority to prohibit marijuana or any of these other drugs that they're now enforcing as part of the war on drugs, that's something people need to take a look at.
5% of the world's population in the United States, yet it has 25% of the world's prison population. That makes the United States the world's largest jailer. I mean, these stats are ridiculous. Since 1970, the prison population in the United States has increased 700%.
And most of that is the war on drugs. And I've had law enforcement against prohibition on many times. I've interviewed them on the nightly news. Jim Gierach, a former prosecutor in Cook County in Chicago. And he started out believing that they could stop this by interdiction, that they could stop it by force, just as many people believe that they could stop the harmful effects of alcohol that way. You can't. It's a social problem. It's a psychological problem. It's a spiritual, it's a medical problem. It is not a law enforcement problem. And so they need to address it that way. That's what's filling up our prisons. And there's a lot of very sinister undercurrents to that with the private prisons and other things like that. But it's that legal system. That's where we first began losing our rights to due process, where they could essentially charge inanimate objects with crimes and just confiscate them. So even before the war on terror, we had the war on drugs as essentially attacking the fundamental basis of our liberty and our right to the presumption of innocence until proven guilty. I mean, talking about due process with these guns, I mean, we have lost due process so many decades ago with the war on drugs.
Pamela in California, you're on the air. Go ahead, Pamela.
Hi, I'm calling because I wanted to let everyone know about there's a Texas federal lawsuit to force Obama and DHS to stop illegal alien dumping of illegal aliens that are not pre-screened for illnesses, criminal background, and identity, and quarantine these people as well as people traveling legally from Ebola-stricken areas. And there's actually a hearing on this lawsuit October 29th in Brownsville, Texas, at the federal courthouse at 10 in the morning. And Orly Tates is a private citizen. She's a doctor of dentistry in California, and she's a private citizen. She brought this lawsuit, and she's doing the work that all the state attorney generals and all the state governors should be doing in trying to defend herself and defend other citizens of this country from the federal government's lack of protecting us by sealing the borders, by ensuring people coming over the border aren't carrying seriously contagious, deadly illnesses like Ebola. So I was calling about that, and it just really demonstrates, actually Governor Perry was alerted of this lawsuit, hasn't done anything to become an intervener or to join the lawsuit, and then also the State Attorney General of Texas was alerted by myself. I called both offices. So we're in a sorry state of affairs where even our states are not protecting us from the federal government.
Yeah, I mean, we've got an article on Infowars.com which kind of ties into that, which is Rand Paul blaming political correctness for hindering scientific decisions on Ebola outbreak. And we've seen this at the border, haven't we, David, where even the ISIS threat now is being ignored, even though we had the leaks from within law enforcement sources that ISIS was active in Mexico just across the border, being ignored by the Obama administration because its border agenda is diametrically opposite to having anything safe and secure. What's your take on that, David?
Well, yeah, you mentioned Rand Paul's interview saying that it was political correctness. There was an article up that Drudge linked to on Breitbart. Nancy Pelosi chides a reporter for using the term illegal alien. You know, when they asked her a question about illegal aliens, she said, are you referring to undocumented people who are in the United States? And he says, illegal alien, yes, ma'am. She said, undocumented people. Okay. So we've got 13,500 people, the Daily Caller says, in these two countries that are under an Ebola pandemic that have visas to enter the United States. Now, if you got a visa permission, there are certain conditions in that visa. They are granting you permission to enter. Why can't we at least have the conditions that people are going to be quarantined? We've got dogs coming into the UK, as we mentioned yesterday, 21 days if they're coming in from the EU or the United States. If they're coming in from other countries, 3 months. Why can't we at least protect our human population as much as other countries are concerned about protecting their dogs? It's just political correctness.
Josh in Kansas, you're on the air. Go ahead, Josh.
Hey, guys. Great listening to you. I wanted to talk to you a couple things real quick. One, about the Ebola. I know you're not in these or anything, but kind of what's the best thing to protect ourselves against it. I got a 7-year-old daughter that, concerns me. The other thing, just what you guys brought up a minute ago with that other caller about the war on drugs, it's just a joke. It is absolutely a joke. You find me anywhere that pothead is going to do half the damage that somebody out drinking is going to do. It's just not going to happen. So the war on drugs, that's absolutely just a joke.
Well, I mean, with Ebola, there really is nothing you can. I guess you could avoid large population areas. Obviously, you have to avoid West Africa. But apart from that, David, there's really not a lot. There's no known cure that's been actually established at the moment. They're working on vaccines, drugs. Some have been successful, some haven't. Apart from that, and again, I'm at the point. Go ahead.
You can take a look at what the CDC recommends. Might start with what they're recommending for airplanes. There's several publications where they're putting out their advice for that. But there's certain risks that we just take every day. Every day we run down the road, we're pretty close to people that are passing us, just a few feet away from somebody that's coming at me 60 miles an hour, and I'm going 60 miles an hour. So there's an element of risk that we all accept in our everyday life. One of the things you can do is make sure that your immune system is in as good a shape as possible. I do believe that there's also something that silver is very effective. You can. I take that on a regular basis. So does my family. I think that's very effective at not only controlling bacteria, but other studies have said that they thought that it was effective at controlling viruses. So you can do some research in that. I would just say, make sure, as you should, whether it's going to be from a pandemic or whether it's some kind of a power outage, you should prepare in advance a little bit, have some extra food in case something does turn up in your community and they start quarantining and isolating things. It could be difficult for you to get access to food and water. So just make sure you have that there like you would if you were preparing for a storm. You need to always have a certain amount of preparation and then just try to prepare yourself to be as healthy as possible. Many of these people who are survivalists will say that people who have medical issues aren't going to make it past the first couple of days if there's some kind of a grid down scenario because they just aren't in physical shape. So try to get yourself and your family in as good a possible physical shape as you can.
Well, coming back on the Alex Jones Show Live, we're going to talk to Lionel in the next segment. More of your calls coming up with David Knight on all these domestic and global issues. InfoWarsStore.com. That's the website for all the health products. Stay tuned.
In the past decade, we have witnessed unparalleled scientific discoveries in the area of health. But no one has put together a formula that focuses directly on brain health, nerve growth factors, and optimizing your cellular energy at the same time. DNA Force is one of the most expensive formulas to produce. Some of the ingredients in DNA Force are $12,000 a kilogram. We are using the coveted, patented, only American source of PQQ, CoQ10, and more. You want the best that's out there at the lowest price anywhere? Well, we're bringing you a total win-win. The ultimate value, cutting-edge, trailblazing game changer that also supports the InfoWar. We have produced a limited run of DNA Force, and it will take up to 12 weeks to produce more once we sell out. Secure your DNA Force today at InfoWarsLife.com or call toll-free 888-253-3139. DNA Force from InfoWars Life.